All right. Looks like we should be live.
I think so.
I don't know. The other thing says it's still setting up. Oh, we're gonna
On
do
my side, it says it's live.
Yeah, it does here too. So what's up, Malcolm?
Nothing. It is hovering around 93 degrees last time I checked in the DC area, and my computer is acting funny. But outside of that, I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's low 80s here. It looks like it's going to rain, and we're getting more. We've gotten deluged the last couple of days with water, and we're getting more tomorrow. So yay! So much fun. Yeah, exactly.
So Paul had the idea, based at least in part on what we're talking about in the cohort, of discussing violence dynamics. And I don't know. Say again?
Well, I found a funny Yoda meme, to be fair.
That's how every good story starts. So I was on the internet looking for Yoda memes.
And but what's the topic you, myself, Rory, we've talked about many, many, many times is we occasionally forget the language of brand newbies, right? The whole idea in the post that I put up of being cursed by knowledge. And it's hard to remember what it's like being so brand new you don't understand the language or the context. A lot of really good responses today, both on Instagram and on Facebook, on where people would start, what they come from, what they consider or value. And I don't think numbering them is any use. I think it's situational depending on the individual. One of the posts that I liked, Dylan Beyer in particular, put that violence is contextual and it's very, very, very important. And that made me think that you and I talking about violence dynamics, which I think we agree is on that list. I don't know if it's number 2, 12, 7 of jumping off points. So thought it'd be an interesting chat.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
We happen to be working on it this month in the cohort. So
may have something to do with it, just a little bit. But I think you're right. For me, it might be number 1 because you can't solve problems that you don't understand. And so there's a lot of, and because I agree with Dylan on the contextual piece, there's a lot of solutions where we're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole because the idea is a fight is a fight is a fight. Yeah, that's so much bullshit. There's so much variation and there's so many things that go into all of these situations. And you've got stuff with dozens or even hundreds of moving pieces emotionally, in the actual physical space, strategically, et cetera. And so, and I think one of the things that gets left out a lot when we talk about violence dynamics is the notion of a relationship. Because for a lot of civilians and even among some professionals, there's a degree of, I know this person, maybe not friends, maybe not connected, or not close, but somehow connected. And that plays a role because yes, in a vacuum, in this specific amount of time and space that the fight occupies, and nothing else will matter. But for longevity purposes, you doing something has implications for the future. And so violence dynamics are number 1 for me because defining the problem helps you derive solutions. And I would argue that for self-defense and martial arts, a lot of us started at solutions and worked our way backwards. So it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. All right, let me figure out when it makes sense to do this. All right, let me figure out how to deal with the before and after of this. Okay, cool, but I want to do this. Not like, here's the problem. How do I solve it? What are the ranges of solutions and levels of efficiency thereof? You know what I mean?
Something, hammer, everything's a nail, something. Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah. Well, is there a guy joke in here about how guys just want to fix problems? Is that with martial arts being an overwhelmingly, unfortunately over history, fortunately not as much recently, but is that part of our problem? Is that what we're saying?
I feel like it's an analogy to like the guy who has succeeded at one home improvement project and just wants to fix everything with the same tools, using the same thing. And he's like, look, man, a hammer, duct tape, and some bubble gum fix that, so it must fix this. It's like, dude, that was a shelf. This is a dishwasher.
And every really intelligent wife cringes in the background, being like,
Yeah,
just call the professional.
she's like, oh my God, if I didn't think it would start a fight, I would call them for you. But
Yeah, there's a good analogy there. I would say
yeah.
having the benefit of having worked with a lot of law enforcement over the years,
Mm-hmm.
We talk about violence from domestic violence perspective, right? And we've talked
Mm-hmm.
a lot with Tammy about this. And I think I was just reading a stat the other day, the odds that kids know their abuser is something 85 to 90%. That's a huge amount, right?
Ooh.
I mean, you're working with kids, they think they're fighting the Hulk at some point or whatever, the evil Spider-Man. But that's not reality. That's not what they're going to be facing. Most women are going to face the majority, whether it's 51 or 79%, are going to face violence and abuse from somebody that they know.
Yeah.
And it depends on the way that you train, but I would say a lot of the solutions provided do not fit the model of violence being brought to bear. And for our friends in law enforcement, you mentioned you're going to know the people. If they're local law enforcement, there's an extremely high chance. A lot of my friends and students and coworkers who are on the job in some way, shape, or form have informed me over the years of it's really weird when you see the guy in the grocery store the following week that you had to arrest last weekend for being drunk and disorderly or whatever the case may be. So, and again, what are the solutions provided? Rory showed me a couple of the kata from his particular style of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
They're all assassination techniques. They don't apply in most cases. It's a particularly violent style of jiu-jitsu. So
at least they don't apply for us.
Right, exactly.
But I think even among pros, there's a degree of familiarity, at least stateside. Mm-hmm. Among bad guys, this is a rough observation. It's not scientific. There's no polling data here. But a lot of the bad guys that I was around growing up, some of the career bad guys that I've had reason to be around later on in life, the networks all knew each other. And they'd at least heard of each other. Even enemies knew each other by face and by name. That's why gang stuff confuses people sometimes, because they're like, well, wait a minute, you're a Crip. Why can you wear red? Because if he's well known enough, they don't need him to wear a bandana. Right. They know him by face. So when they see him, they're not going to be looking for a bandana. They're going to try to kill him if that's the level of problem that they have.
Right.
And so you get these really deep kind of pseudo kinship or actual kinship networks. I was actually talking to an at-risk kid that I know. I'm trying to pull up the image right now about how violence influences the environment. And he drew me, I don't know if this is going to come out well, but he drew me this really, really detailed diagram of all of the people influenced by one murder. And he didn't even talk about the law enforcement side. He was just talking about the street side. And he started outlining the dynamics. And so I think the reason that violence dynamics is number one for me is because if you're preparing to hunt whale and it turns out you're hunting quail, you're going to be poorly executed, or at least you're likely to.
Yeah.
And then when you throw the relationship piece into it, and the fact that, we talk about the statistics for women. Far as I know, the statistics for dudes are comparable. We are not quite as likely to be attacked or have to defend ourselves from acquaintances or people in our social circle, but still very likely. Like if it's going to happen, it's going to be somebody that you know or you're connected to or whatever.
And to be clear, so this gets to the whole concept of violence dynamics, right? Mm-hmm. Not you went to the bar and opted into.
That's not what we're talking about.
That's not the violence we're talking about. It is under the umbrella of violence dynamics. If you haven't heard the term monkey dance, you have some reading to go do.
You know what? You're right. No, I just messed up because Yoda told me basics and I didn't. You're right. Okay. So what?
So again, hold on. This is a perfect example. We both do it.
Yeah, no, it's regular because you don't really think about it. Yep. Like, if you ever tried to explain subtraction to a kindergartner, it's very difficult.
Yes, I have. This is occasionally they're on the mat here. It's challenging.
Yeah, like we take one away. But so when we're talking about the violence we're talking about is predatory. It is not And the simplest way to define predatory for these purposes is non-consensual. One or more parties do not want this to happen, and they are not interested. They would love to leave.
Right.
But somebody else decides to force it, versus voluntary, where we're deciding, Paul, you scuffed my Puma. I think we shall engage in fisticuffs. But I think it's
Puma the sneaker or Puma the cat? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Because my brain went to cat first.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you did. I don't know. But I think that definition alone, just saying one person really doesn't want to be participating in this, and there may be a personal connection, is enough to hopefully cause people to reevaluate a lot of the stuff that they're doing physically.
Yeah.
Because there's so much kind of like lip service. Let me check a box. I say that I'm trying to de-escalate this, but I never actually practice de-escalating. I mostly just practice talking and hitting people.
Well, that's I was interviewed by somebody, coffee talk, by somebody the other day. And, you know, how did you get to where you are today? I was asked in a what is this group? It's a business group about video marketing and stuff like that. And it was, what's the most influential book you've read on business? And I wrote Meditations on Violence. And a bunch of people were like, wait, what? But that's not, you know, everybody else had the 10X rule and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, out of all things, that changed the direction of my career more than anything else. I've had father's a small business owner, so I get kind of the business element and aspects. I've added little nuggets here and there. But reading Meditations on Violence drastically changed how the direction of everything. And, you know, more and more I talk to people in the martial industry, and they've had that same, I'm going to read this book. Oh shit, I'm doing everything wrong moment in time, right? You're like, I'm literally addressing the wrong problems because the context was not there. Back to Dylan's comment on the Yoda post. The context was inappropriate. Everything was from the, you know, chest beating fight perspective, especially in a jiu-jitsu mentality where it's like, you can use this, you know. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of bro.
Aggressive hugging.
It is very aggressive hugging. Combat cuddles.
I hate combat cuddles and struggle snuggles. I don't think I think that's part of the growth. Because once you start factoring all the moving pieces in, it continually gets more complicated. Because even stuff like, let's say you've got 3 potential physical solutions to something, and in a vacuum, one of those solutions makes the most sense. But in reality, you have all of these other sort of longevity-oriented concerns that it might change it. And so the more that you think about the problem of violence, and the more that you think about the people involved and their various motivations and the connections they have between them, the more complicated it gets. But knowing that complexity is there and exploring it is probably like step 1, unless you're just like, you know what, I'm just doing a martial art because I like it, and that's perfectly fine.
Which is totally fine. And I tell people that all the time. Like I tend to pick on Olympic Taekwondo only because I've
you and the TKD people.
It's only because nothing at all. It's like, it's just out of all things, it's the people that we've had come in here, and like what we combat cuddles and jiu-jitsu is so far afield that they're just like, why are you in my face? What's going on?
Why are you touching me?
Exactly. Why is there contact? What's happening? So that's why I tend to nudge it more than anything else. I love my friends in Taekwondo. I really want to grapple you. Anyway, out of all things, you know, if your context doesn't afford for all the options, right? You can't be an expert everywhere. You just, nobody can, right? That's why if you're able to win tournaments, cool. You're probably not working on self-defense, right? Whatever the tournament is, doesn't really matter what the tournament is. That's fantastic. I'm glad you're enjoying that. It's way better than sitting on your couch at night watching Netflix or whatever the hell you're watching. What do people watch anymore? Disney Plus. I'm glad that you're getting the physical activity in. It's a life enhancement moment in time. It's a life improvement moment in time. That's good. This is great stuff. But if you look at the contextual part of it, one of Rory's quotes that I tend to use a lot is a lever rated for 300 pounds does not move 600 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand where the things fail to scale, or if you don't understand where they become applied, Tammy said many times, her best way of getting a male to understand female against male violence is imagine a guy double you, like 2 of your height and 2 of your weight and 2 of your strength. What still works? What are you going to advise this person to do? And that's where we go back to what are the basics. I think I'm nudge for those out there watching. I'm nudging my fellow directors on doing more of the bare bones basics, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, probably YouTube. We're trying to grow the YouTube channel. So go over there and hit like or whatever you're supposed to do on YouTube. Still learning on that one.
Hit the bell, subscribe.
Yeah.
Comment,
all
share.
the stuff. That's going to be the tagline right there. Malcolm just angrily telling you to subscribe.
No, but I take your point, and I think part of it is once you start factoring that stuff in, like here's what it would be like if you were a female trying to apply these physical solutions, and then coming back to the punchline, which is that it'll work until it doesn't in some circumstances, sometimes, some places, etc. Right? Like there's no magic bullet. And hopefully that's what some people take away from violence dynamics. It's that when you study it, you realize that people who are really good and really skilled and really prepared and really experienced, still things go sideways. So all you're doing is stacking the odds in your favor, recognizing what's happening and what kinds of solutions probably work for that context, and then appreciating the fact that you could do everything right and it could still not work out the way you wanted it to.
Yeah, we got to switch over to the private call, but real quick. Keith Webb, a bunch of good comments on Facebook. Sorry, guys. Malcolm and I were rolling. Keith said, my wife is my partner in teaching self-defense. Her input is invaluable to the practice of teaching. And that's, I when the women instructors talk, I tend to shut up. Our program director here teaches a Friday night free warrior women course, kind of modeled after Tammy's 500 Rising. And I'm always there either as the meat puppet or there's a chance that I might have a little bit more technical knowledge in some way, shape, or form. But, if you're there and there's women who have done zero, that's who this class is designed for. They don't know how to make a fist. They don't know what a good target area is versus a bad target area. I'm sure they've all been taught to, stomp and re-stomp the groin over and over again. But
it works though. I mean, hey.
It might work. It might piss them off. It might work. It depends. Yeah, meat puppet's a good term, Keith. I like that one a lot. Meat puppet and meat shield. If you can hide behind a meat shield, that works really well. And again, we switched to private, but the opportunity in that scenario is to be there and be a resource and help people with, eyes wide open, no context, the white belt mentality, I guess, so to speak, not to be cheesy in the phrasing, but like there's no previous context for it. But we got people in our waiting room. So for Facebook or YouTube later, hope you guys enjoy this. Let us know, guys. Should we do more of the basic stuff? Should we just I have like 53 of them written out or something like that. We should probably
the super basics we're doing for a while. So there's a lot there.
We've written a bunch of stuff out that are like just the super basics, and we really need to walk out context on them, but that's going to be good. So thank you guys for hanging in. Malcolm, thanks
later,
for joining us, as always.
Peace.
Bye,